Hey, what's up guys? Sloth King here. Today we're going to be working on the 2014 Chevy Cruze, and we're going to be replacing the front brake pads and rotors. It's pretty straightforward, so let me show you what you're going to need and let's get into this. Alright guys, so what you're going to need, I prefer using an impact, but you will need a 1/2-inch breaker bar. I prefer using 1/2-inch ratchet and socket set here. I also have some extra impact sockets right here. You will need a hanger for your caliper. This is to push the caliper piston back in so we can put our new brake pads in. You will need some brake cleaner to clean off the new rotors, and you will need some brake caliper grease. And then this grease right here, this is for your slide pins. You will need a torque wrench. I always like to have a hammer just in case if these rotors are stuck on, we can just hammer them off. And then of course you're going to need your new rotors and your choice of brake pads. So everything that I'm going to be using, I will of course link in the description below. So let's start chipping at this, and I'm going to do the driver's side because the passenger side is completely mirrored. So when we're done with this, yeah, I'll just do that side. So anyway, let's do this. All right. All right, so first thing we're going to do, this brake hose right here, this is just on this little bracket. We're going to move that out of the way so that way when we take this part of the caliper off, we can easily swing it back and then hang it on this spring up here on our shock. All right, so these caliper slide pins, these are 10 millimeters. There's going to be one here and then one right here on the bottom. This top part, you have to get a 3/8 ratchet in here just to take this off, because there is this bracket that comes off the shock, and you cannot fit a breaker bar with a 1/2-inch socket on there, so we're just gonna have to make do with this. There we go. Luckily these aren't on too tight. We can actually make do with this size ratchet. All right, that one is out. Set that aside. We're just gonna get the top one off. Now we're gonna get our hook ready. Then we're just gonna slide the top part of the caliper off. Put the hook here, and then we're just going to set that right there, just so we don't have the weight on the brake line itself. Now we can take off these pads. Now these are a little worn down. This little tab right here. Bend down a little bit. There we go. That is pretty worn. Get the same one in the back. The back actually has a little bit more meat on it. There's the front one that was just wearing down a bit more. All right, next, to take off this caliper bracket, there are going to be two 18 millimeter bolts, one located right down here, and then one right up here. We're going to take our 1/2-inch socket with a breaker bar, and then we're going to break this off. Or not break it off. We don't want to break that off. We just want to loosen it. All right, now that we have that off, let's go ahead and start working on taking off the rotor. So with this rotor right here, I just realized that this needs a Torx bit, and this is a T30. So we're gonna just put that Torx bit in there, remove this screw, and then we can go ahead and take off the rotor. And then, now it should come off. And if it doesn't, this is where our hammer comes in. Since we're replacing the rotor, doesn't mind if we don't mind if we hit the face, but if you're just doing a pad change and you just need to remove the rotor for something else, don't hit the face of this. There we go. Now let's go ahead and clean up the surface, and then we're gonna go ahead and get our new rotor on. I know that I listed everything off that we needed in the beginning of the video, but you will need a couple brushes since this does have a little bit of surface rust on it. We're just going to take care of this just by cleaning it off. And then when we get most of it off, we're gonna spray it down with some brake parts cleaner. And then we're going to put a little bit of this, this anti-seize, or actually just this brake and caliper grease. So you can actually use this on the underside of the rotor, which is just on the face of the hub. This will not do any harm to it. There's some other stuff that is not good for it. So if you use this or some copper anti-seize just on the face of here, you're good to go. All right, now that's nice and dry, we're just going to add a thin coat just on here. If you get it on the threads, don't worry, wipe it off when you're all done. As long as you don't leave this on the studs, you won't have any issues. You want to make sure that it can get torqued down properly without them being lubricated. Because if the studs get lubricated, you have a chance of your wheel not getting torqued down properly, and we don't want a wheel flying off while we're driving. All right, let's go ahead and get our new rotor on there. All right, so from the factory, every new rotor has a thin layer of grease on it just to prevent any surface rust from forming on it while it's just sitting on a shelf. So we have to clean it off with some brake parts cleaner before we put it on and put new pads on it. There we go. Now let's go ahead and throw this thing on. So whenever you're throwing this rotor on, make sure that we have our Torx screw right on the hole on the right side, or wherever you took it off on. So that way we can mount this thing on here. What's going on with me? Uh-oh. This is not the right rotor. All right, guys, so we ran into a little bit of a snag. The rotors that were ordered, they were the wrong size. These were 300 millimeter rotors that were ordered, and the ones that are on the car are 276. Even though we have the 16-inch wheels on here, it should have the 300 millimeter rotors, but it's not. So we're gonna have to return these and then get some new ones in, and then we can finish this off. So I will see you whenever we do that. All right, guys, I'm back day 2 with the correct parts for the Chevy Cruze. Now, I'm up to the point where all I need to do is throw the new rotor on. I already have this cleaned, and I have that just sitting on there right now. And yep, got the right rotor, got the correct pads as well. So just so you guys know, whenever you're placing an order for these parts, you wanna make sure that you have the correct size rotors, even if the wheel size you have is listed properly. you need to make sure that the rotors are the correct size, because there's two sizes for this. There's one that's, from what I remember, 300 millimeters, and then there's one that's like 276 or 286, one of the two. So usually, if you have the 16-inch wheels, like he does on his car, it would have the bigger sized rotor and calipers, along with the bigger sized brake pads. But that's not the case with the 1.4 liter Turbo Eco. Even though this has the upgraded wheels on it, they did not throw the upgraded rotors, calipers, and pads on it. It has a smaller size, which comes on the 15-inch wheels. So just because you have the 16-inch wheels does not mean you have the bigger rotors and everything else. So just double check that. And two ways to check that. If we flip our rotor over, you have to take off your wheel to begin with. And you want to measure the hat distance here. Make sure it's correct on the website. And then in the center, you want to measure from side to side on the rotor. And now that we have the measurements correctly, we can go ahead and install this. Doing this in the future for you guys will alleviate a lot of issues with just placing one order by knowing the correct sizes, even if the wheel sizes are completely different. But yeah, anyway, so enough blabbing and talking about this. Let's go ahead and install it and get you guys the torque specs for everything. That's off. I still have the hub greased. There's still plenty of grease on there. So now we can just line up our new rotor with our same bolt hole right here. Put that on. And then don't forget to put your Torx lockdown bolt on here, or technically it's a screw. It doesn't need to be tight, like super tight. There we go. Just enough to hold it on. Now, usually in the brake pads, I preferred getting a kit with the new hardware and everything. I thought that's what was going to be ordered, but we only have the new pads without the hardware. But luckily, we can reuse the old hardware. All we need to do is clean this up and grease it. So all you're gonna do is get some brake parts cleaner, spray your hardware right here, get a brush, go ahead and brush the whole thing. Spray it one more time. Get the top part here. Final spray. And then wipe it clean. Do the same thing for this shim right here. All right, now that our hardware is nice and clean, we need to just go ahead and add a thin layer of grease to this, and we're good to install the bracket. Oh yeah, and by the way, you probably saw that I sprayed some brake parts cleaner on here when I was spraying down that bracket. So we're just gonna clean up the face of this. Make sure there's no gunk on there, no grease. All right, for the hardware, I'm going to be using the brake and caliper grease right here. We do not need a lot on here. We're just going to take it, put a little bit in here, make sure it's coated, but not enough to completely just get liquidy and run off everywhere, because we are going to throw a little bit of the grease on the edges of the pad itself too. This is just going to help your brake pad slide a lot easier and not get stuck or bound up or anything like that. And that is how much grease you want on there. It's not a lot. Now we can go ahead and install our caliper bracket. This will get torqued down to 74 foot-pounds if you have the smaller size rotor and caliper. If you have the bigger one, it will be 100 foot-pounds. And alongside of that, once you get that torqued, you're going to turn the bolt an additional 30 degrees. All right, so now this next part is optional. I prefer adding a little bit of thread locker on the caliper bracket bolt itself, just in case it comes free for any reason. You do not need a lot of this. If you put too much on it, it will be such a pain to take off. That's all I'm putting on there, is not a lot. Let's go ahead and get this lined up. I know you're not on the proper side to see anything, but it's literally just exactly where the bolts go. I'm just getting this one started, and then I'm going to put the bottom one in, and then we'll go ahead and tighten everything down. All right, I'm gonna get these bolts snugged down, and then we're gonna go ahead and torque it. All right, you guys got a bird's eye view of it. So for the first pass, we're going to torque both of them to 74, and then we're going to go back to each one and then turn it an additional 30 degrees. All right, that first one is torqued down. All right, that one's good. Now let's turn it an additional 30 degrees. Now for this, I'm just going to get my breaker bar. That way I have more access. All right, 30 degrees. All right, that's just about 30 degrees. Let's do the same thing for the bottom. All right, there we go. All torqued down. We're good to go. All right, now let's go ahead and get these pads installed. But first, we're going to just add a little bit of lubricant to it. So your pad here, you're going to have a couple of ears right here and right here. What we're going to do is just put a little bit of grease just surrounding it. This is where it's going to make contact with this shim right here, and it's going to move back and forth. So we're just going to place a little bit alongside of the ears. Same thing with right here. Not a lot, just a little bit. So we're going to do that to both pads. And then the pad with the squeal indicator, this little piece of metal right here, this is going to be on the side where the piston is. So if we flip the pad over, we're going to put it on the inboard side where the piston is on the caliper, or closest to your shock. So the inside of your wheel well right here. Since the piston is going to be pushing right up against the back of here, we're just going to put some grease on the back side of here. So that way, whenever our piston makes contact, it will be lubricated, it won't stick, and we won't have any issues. So while that's lubricated and in my hand, I'm just going to install it. The inside one is kind of hard to show you how to install, but I'll show you the outside one. And then here is your outside pad. You do not have any squeal indicator or anything like that. So we're going to lube the same areas. Just put a little bit on there. And then if you look on our caliper, which I'll show you, we'll have two ears right here. One here, and then here's your piston. Your pad is going to be right here, so we want to lubricate where the contact points are. Right here and right on the bottom, just to match up where the ears are. All right, so it's going to be, wow, that's a lot. Do not put that much on. Scrape that up. That's about the contact area for where those ears will clamp onto this outside pad. And then you're just gonna take it, slide it on. And there we go, pads are installed. We have a couple more things to do, and then we're completely done with this side. All right, on your caliper, you'll have these two slide pins right here. You're gonna see a boot covering it. You're gonna have one here, and one right on the bottom. We have to go ahead and lubricate these so these can move freely. This is what causes the piston to help glide and apply proper brake force on each pad. If these aren't lubricated, it can kind of like seize up, and one pad will just slowly grind away on this on the rotor, and it will cause uneven pad wear. So all you got to do is just pull on it a little bit, pop that back, and take this out. It's still pretty lubricated, but since we're here, we're just going to go ahead and lubricate it. Put a rag around it, spray some brake parts cleaner on it, wipe it off. It's nice and clean. You can use this same grease. It is used on these slide pins, or you can use this type of lubricant as well. I don't know why I forgot the name. We're just going to put a little bit on here. Wipe it around with our hands. This is why I like to have gloves on. And then just go ahead and reinsert it. Make sure it moves freely. And you're good to go. Do the same thing with the bottom one, and then we can move on to the piston. All right, these are nice and lubricated. They move freely, which is great. Now we need to go ahead and compress this piston so we can put the caliper on a lot easier without fighting the new pad size. Because if we just put it on like this, it is not gonna go on at all. So let me show you what we're gonna do. All right, so this process is pretty simple. We're going to take an old brake pad, and then we're going to take this tool right here. What this does is just allows you to put some pressure evenly onto the piston. See how it's loaded in like that? As we turn it, it's going to push the piston in. Now, if you have a big C-clamp, you can do the same thing. Put the C-clamp on here and just tighten it down, and it will compress the piston as well. Or you can use a big pair of lockjaw pliers and just squeeze it down just to push it in. So we're just going to turn it until the piston is fully seated. Oh, and one thing I forgot to do. While we're compressing this, just make sure you pop off your brake reservoir cap up here, so that way the fluid can come up a lot easier. There we go. Now this is smooth like butter. All right, that should be good enough. Let's go ahead and see if this thing will just slide right on. Oh, it's really close. Just needs to get pushed back just a little bit more. There we go. Now it should pop right on. Yep. Grab our caliper screws. Let's go ahead and start both of them. Now these will get torqued to 21 foot-pounds. There's one. There we go, torque down. Just go ahead and place our brake hose back in position. Now, when you put the wheel on, these lug nuts get torqued to 100 foot-pounds. After that, you're all done. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the passenger side done. And then I'm also doing the rear brake shoes as well. And I already have a video out on how to do that. You can click this link right up here, and I will also have that in the description below if you wanna check that out. But I will be back whenever I'm done with the passenger side. Alrighty guys, and I am all done. That took a little bit over an hour to do. Wasn't too bad, but I'm just glad that the right parts came in finally, and now the car can get back on the road and brake safely. Look at how nice and clean that rotor looks. Brand spanking new. But yeah, wasn't too hard to do, guys. You can get this done easily in your driveway within a few hours if you set that aside, take your time, and do everything. If this video helped you out and you want to support the channel, you can go ahead and click the link in the description below for my merch site, and you can pick up a hat, or you can pick up a couple t-shirts that I have on there. And yeah, glad everything worked out safe for you guys. And like always, I'll catch you guys on the next ride.